So in this video, I'm gonna talk a little bit about recent happenings with Hurricane Ida, because it's of something of importance to me. Um, so just to be aware, there's probably going to be some photos from the damage from Hurricane Ida, which made landfall yesterday as of this recording. So with that, let's get started. So, all of you who are longtime viewers know that, of course, I'm a climate scientist for a living. What probably a lot of you don't know is that I actually started in meteorology, which is a very related discipline, and still do take very strong interest in meteorology and a lot of work in that myself. Um, and actually, in 2005, August 2005, I was a sophomore meteorology major, and you know, what happened, of course, in August 2005, August 29th, 2005, 16 years ago. Yesterday was the landfall of Hurricane Katrina. And, so it means a lot for me because, you're just getting your teeth as a meteorologist. You're just from figuring yourself out and learning the science and learning all these things. And you had incredible history happen right in front of you as you were watching from afar. And actually, after Katrina, I went on on a spring break service program with my university, my undergrad institution at the time, and went down to New Orleans and St. Bernard Parish in Louisiana and did a lot of work with recovery from Hurricane Katrina. I actually went there twice on service missions, and I've been to New Orleans many times for conference trips, actually. The American Meteorological Society in particular, I think, actually had a lot of conference trips to that area that actually helped make a lot of difference because they did a lot of service work for some of their conference trips in the years following Katrina. So it was certainly interesting for me. Then at the time when you were young, so in March of 2006, I was down there after Katrina, and it was still such an absolute disaster. And it says something because actually Ida came in stronger, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. And I have this photo up here because meteorologist in me loves this because this is such a gorgeous, pristine photo, and at the same time, it was and is really deadly when you see something like this approaching land. So knowing the humanity that knowing how much people can be really impacted by it. So I do want to just open and say, if you're watching this from Louisiana or Alabama or Mississippi or anywhere that's been really impacted by Ida, I hope you're well. Um, I hope you're staying safe. I hope you may not have power right now, but I hope you get it back quickly. And I hope you can recover and rebuild, and I will be, of course, supporting, as I often do myself, I will, of course, be supporting charities to help with that, because I don't think I'm going to be able to get down there to help this time, but I will do everything that I can there and give my support to the local rescues and charities that are going to be helping out probably for a fair amount of time to come with this particular storm. So, and yet Ida is incredibly impressive in the amount of flooding it caused. I was looking for the tab I had open. Yeah, it was a lot of flooding. There was a lot of wind damage, all sorts of things that happened, and it was, I'm not going to dwell on this too long. But of course, now there's a couple of questions that everyone are asking, or starting to ask anyway. Of what, where is Ida stacking up, or where will it stack up in the record of hurricanes that we have? And of course, Katrina being the benchmark of all benchmarks with respect to Atlantic hurricanes. And of course, the other question that's going to happen, whether or not I wish it to, is going to be surrounding Ida and climate change, which I'm not going to get into in this video. I'm honestly not going to do that because I don't believe in getting into those things right when a disaster is happening. So no, I'm not going to do it, and I think it's pretty shameful when news organizations and some scientists jump right to, oh, okay, let's figure out what's associated with climate change when something when there's probably an epic amount of human suffering going on right now with this kind of a disaster. So, I don't think so. I'm not going into that in here. And I mean, I'm not going to dwell too much on all of this. But yeah, I mean, so it's like folks who just completely lost everything, you know? And there's a lot of that right now. But what I do want to do in this video, and actually here's another good one from the New York Post where you can see, so these photos are all over, so I'm not going to dwell on those. But I did want to, rather than dealing with the climate change thing, I did want to come on really quick and talk about some historical context, and also to give you a sense where Ida was on the scale when it made landfall. So this is the National Hurricane Center website, which I'm usually very critical of most government websites because most government websites, it's actually hard to find anything that you're looking for. But in this case, the Hurricane Center website is actually really good. So if you're looking for things about the Saffir-Simpson scale and all this kind of stuff, you can go down here to, you can go to the Educational Resources tab. There's lots of great stuff in here. I encourage you to go look at it if you're really interested in it. There's lots of good stuff here. And the Saffir-Simpson scale is basically how we categorize the strength of hurricanes. And so, anything under 74 mile an hour wind speed, that's a tropical storm. It's 34 to 74 or something like that, is a tropical storm wind speed. So that's sort of your baby storm. And yet they can be really powerful, as we'll talk about that in a second. And then you go up the scale, and one of the reasons they weight it this way is because they are also then asking, what about the damage that's happened? Well-constructed frame homes would have damage to roof, shingles, vinyl siding, gutters. Large branches of trees will snap, and shallowly rooted trees may be toppled, things like that. So they factor in the damage specifically due to the winds. And we'll get to this here. So extreme wind damage extremely dangerous winds cause extensive damage. That's the category 2, 96 to 110 miles per hour wind speeds. And this is sustained winds. This is not wind gusts. So wind gusts are often much higher than these. Anything that is category 3 or above, or 111 miles per hour sustained winds and above, that's classified as a major hurricane. Last year, one that hit really close to where Ida hit last year was Hurricane Laura. Hurricane Laura was on the top end of the spectrum. It was a category 5 at landfall, which is a rare thing to see, but extremely dangerous, extremely powerful. So was Hurricane Michael a couple of years ago along the north coast of Florida. It was tremendously bad there. So these hurricanes down here are really, really bad. And we'll give you something interesting with this. At landfall, Ida was a category 4 hurricane. And so that's why there was such tremendous concern. It was in this ballpark of 130 to 156 mile per hour winds, sustained winds for that matter. And particularly that's in the eye wall, which compared to the breadth and size of a hurricane, is a narrow area, but that is extremely dangerous. Extremely dangerous. Like, take things that are lying around on the ground and they go flying off. Takes your roof off. Takes things apart pretty easily, actually. And, you do not want to be out and about in it. And so, the same thing here, of course. Another interesting one that you might remember, actually, some bits of history here is Hurricane Dorian. A couple of years ago, Dorian was infamous because it came up the coast and then it stalled over the Bahamas, but it stayed stalled over the Bahamas as a category 5. And so there was huge chunks of the Bahamas that suffered tremendous damage from Dorian because it stayed there and it sustained winds for 3 or 4 days in this range top end. And the gusts can go over 200 miles an hour very easily in a category 5 hurricane. So this is why we take these things seriously. But there's one thing to note here, and this is a little bit of a history bit. Saffir-Simpson is all based entirely upon winds. And I think it's been quite prominent in the meteorology community, and particularly in the last couple of years, I think particularly since Hurricane Harvey. in 2017 that there is a desire now to change the rating scale for hurricanes to incorporate particularly heavy rain and storm surge, but particularly heavy rain. And the reason for that is Hurricane Harvey, in the space of a couple of days, put down, I think it was like 40 inches, 50 inches in some places in Texas, and particularly if we all saw the photos of Houston at the time, Houston was absolutely a mess. And some of the time-lapse footage of the flooding in Houston is utterly astounding. And so that's an important thing to consider now is, should the categorization change? And I think actually I would side that it probably should. That it needs to start including something like the rain rate or the amount of rain that can be put out over a few day period or something like that. Because of the intense amount of flooding, and particularly inland flooding, not just coastal flooding. Yes, storm surge is an issue. I mean, 16-foot storm surge was the possibility with Ida, and I'm pretty sure that probably did happen from some of the other photos that I couldn't find them just now, but I did remember seeing an aerial photo of a neighborhood that was entirely flooded. In the southern part of Louisiana, not New Orleans proper, because there's a bunch of photos out of New Orleans proper, but there's a bunch of different parishes that I did see photos for where they've had some very serious amounts of flooding, and there's of course been some major wind damage on top of it. So it's an interesting challenge there, but I do think so because hurricanes are generally speaking rainmakers. They produce a tremendous amount of rain, not just wind, and so I think it would be quite a good idea to think about recategorizing based upon the rain rate. Now, of course, this is the question. So Ida was a 4 at landfall. Katrina was a 3, actually, at landfall. Katrina was technically weaker. And Katrina was a 3 at landfall. So based upon wind speed, anyway. Katrina also caused a lot of flooding, and that's actually because the levee system in New Orleans broke, particularly along Lake Pontchartrain. I don't know that that's happened yet. It seems like it's okay. I haven't heard for sure, so please don't take my word for it. I don't know 100% right now with that. But of course, what's going to happen now is now that Ida's passed, of course, after everything with recovery and what have you, then there's going to be the assessments for how much damage. And of course, the most unfortunate part of this is loss of life. That's involved here. And so there's going to be that, and that's where we come back to the Hurricane Center, and we want to go look at something here. So under the educational resources, one of the things that you can find is their records and facts section. And in here, this is where they have the most infamous hurricanes on record. And actually, this is the one that I want to point to because they haven't updated this whole one as frequently, but they do keep making sure to update the most costly hurricanes, and they did update it before the 2021 hurricane season started. And of course, you've also just got the entirety of the Atlantic Basin, but this is the one with respect to the United States that I want to look at because this is going to point out some interesting things. So let me see if it will open. Here we go. National Centers for Environmental Information, in consultation with the National Hurricane Center, has updated this listing of the costliest tropical cyclones to strike the United States. Let's make that a little bit bigger here. This listing was previously found in the NOAA Memorandum, the deadliest, costliest, and most intense U.S. tropical cyclones. For all United States hurricanes, Hurricane Katrina in 2005, $176.3 billion is the costliest storm on record. Hurricane Harvey, $136.3 billion in 2017, ranks second. Hurricane Maria, 2017, $98.1 billion, ranks third. Hurricane Sandy, 2012, $77.4 billion, ranks fourth. And Hurricane Irma, 2017, $54.5 billion, ranks fifth. The NCEI provides data set provides more loss information than previous figures used by the National Hurricane Center, including agriculture, individual payouts, and disaster money from the federal government to the respective states. In performing these disaster cost assessments, the NCEI examined statistics from a wide variety of sources. Using the latest scientific methodology, it determined the estimated total cost of these events, that is, the costs in terms of dollars that would not have been incurred had the event not happened. Insured and uninsured losses are included in the damage estimates. Sources include the National Weather Service, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, individual state emergency management agencies, state and regional climate centers, media reports, and insurance industry estimates. All that is to say there's a tremendous number of people who do the damage assessment, who are involved in the damage assessment and say something here. So let's go down to the list. And I gotta say, this is adjusted for inflation. So this is based upon the 2021 Consumer Price Index. So that's one of the reasons why Katrina is so much more. So if you count for inflation, Katrina remains to this day, and by a fair margin too, the costliest hurricane in history. As before 2021 hurricane season. I have no idea where Ida is going to rank. I'm going to say that right now. I'm not going to make a judgment on where Ida is going to rank. I'm just giving you a little bit of a history and background and what current records are. That's all I'm doing. You have Hurricane Harvey, of course, is our second one. Hurricane Maria, which, if you don't remember Maria didn't hit much of the mainland, if I don't remember correctly, but this was one that did huge amounts of damage in Puerto Rico. It was a direct hit of a Category 4 hurricane on Puerto Rico, as I recall. Irma, Hurricane Andrew, for those of you who were in Florida in 1992, of course it's still there. It was one of the deadliest there. This is Hurricane Laura from last year, and this is why, again, where Louisiana and New Orleans and everybody is there, it's a concern, because Laura did strike around that area of Lake Charles, Louisiana last year. There's an infamous image of the radar that the Weather Service was relying on getting ripped off, having been ripped off by a Hurricane Laura, which, for the record, the National Weather Service radar domes are rated to handle winds of 130 some odd miles an hour at least. So for it to get ripped off, it was a heck of a lot of wind from Hurricane Laura. But and this is one of the reasons, this one right here is one of the reasons why there's been the argument of we need to include something other than winds, because Allison here, her name was retired in 2001, which significant storms that do significant damage, the name is retired, and the Hurricane Center doesn't use it again when it comes up with its list of names, and that's to avoid any repeats and confusion at this point. So you have Allison was a tropical storm. It didn't have very high winds. That's under 74 miles an hour sustained winds. Allison was a tremendous rainmaker also, as I recall, and also in a very similar area of Texas, if I recall correctly, to where Hurricane Harvey made landfall. So that's one of the reasons why Harvey and Allison, and that's some of the reasons why they're considering changing the Saffir-Simpson scale. So yeah, there's a lot here, and these guys down here that you're seeing, they actually they predate the naming of hurricanes. The naming of hurricanes started in the 1950s, so this actually predated that. So the Long Island Express was a heck of a hurricane that hit, as you might guess, Long Island. I can't remember what the Great Atlantic Hurricane was, but here. So, but you have a bunch in here. So Delta, we had Greek letters last year, and we had a lot of Greek letters actually. Zeta here, another really big hurricane. So there's actually quite a few in here. So when you're thinking of at least property damage, this is where you're gonna start, unfortunately, and these are your benchmarks to work with, and we'll see what happens with Ida. So that's just what I wanted to do with this video. I just wanted to give a little background history lesson and to talk on it and say, if you got it in your heart to give to some of the charities, of course, beware of scammers that are going to be down there helping out with folks in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama for a while. I implore you to do it, because they're going to be in need of it quite badly. As you saw some photos, some people have probably lost everything. In fact, could be quite a lot of people that have lost everything. Of course, this is still an ongoing event for all practical purposes, because it's pouring buckets in the middle of the Southeast with the remnants of Ida at this point. So I encourage you to be giving, and this is just your basic history lesson. I'll probably come back to it at some point to talk about Hurricane Ida and climate change. I don't believe, just hurricanes in general and climate change, but I don't believe it's the right thing to do to talk about that while events are in process and people are suffering as a result of it. I don't like doing that. That's a huge amount of emotional manipulation to me that I'm not going to get into. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed this quick history lesson. For all of you down there, I hope you stay safe, you stay well, and we will, of course, the rest of us who are out there in America, will be praying for you. I'm sure I will be certainly praying for you all and doing best to help you as we can during this, what is something pretty crazy. That's it for me. Thank you all very much for checking this out. If you like this video, you know what to do with that. I'm feeling pretty somber, as you can tell, so I'm not gonna go too much of a spoof of my own video here. But thank you all for watching. You can find me, of course, over at siworthy.locals.com if you become a supporter there. Like, share, comment, subscribe, all that good jazz. And I will catch you next time. And until next time, I'm Adrian, and I hope you stay curious.